Okay. Before that, we recite the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. Gopair Makhe Pratihate Vraja Viplavaya. Okay. Kridan Vane Nishi Nishakara Rashmi Gauryam. Rason Mukha Kalapadayata Murchitena. Udipita Smararujam Vraja Bridvatunam. Hartur Harishyati Shirodana Danagasya. Kridan Vane Nishi Nishakara Rashmi Gauryam. Rashon Mukha Kalapadayata Murchitena. Udipita Smararujam Vraja Brihadvadunam. Hartur Harishyati Shirodana Danugasya. Kridan Vane Nishi Nishakara Rashmi Gauryam. Rason Mukha Kala Padayata Murchitena. Uddipita Smararujam Vraja Brihadvadunam. Hartu Harishyati Shirodana Dunagasya. Hartu Harishyati Sirodhana Dunuganasya. Okay. Word for word. Kridan, while engaged in his pastimes. Vane, in the forest of Vrindavana. Nisi, nocturnal. Nishakara, the moon. Rashmi Gauryam, white moonshine. Rasa Unmukha, desiring to dance with. Kalapadayata, accompanied by sweet songs. Murchitena, and melodious music. Udipita, awakened. Smararujam, sexual desires. Vrajabrit, the inhabitants of Vrajabhumi. Vadhunam, of the wives. Hartu, of the kidnappers. Harishyati, will vanquish. Sira, the head. Dhanada anugasya, of the follower of the rich Kuvera. Translation and purport by Divine Gracious A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. When the Lord was engaged in his pastimes of the rasa dance in the forest of Vrindavan, enlivening the sexual desires of the wives of the inhabitants of Vrindavan by sweet and melodious songs, a demon of the name Sankachuda, a rich follower of the treasure of heaven, Kuvera, kidnapped the damsels, and the Lord severed his head from his trunk. Purport. We should carefully note that the statements described herein are the statements of Brahmaji to Narada, and he was speaking to Narada of events that would happen in the future during the advent of Lord Krishna. The pastimes of the Lord are known to the experts who are able to see past, present, and future, and Brahmaji, being one of them, foretold what would happen in the future. The killing of Sankachura by the Lord is a more recent incident after the Rasa Leela, and not exactly a simultaneous affair. In the previous verses, we have seen also that the Lord's engagement in the affairs of the forest fire was described along with his pastimes of punishing the Kaliya snake, and similarly the pastimes of the Rasa dance and the killing of Sankachura are also described herein. The adjustment is that all these incidents would take place in the future, after the time when it was being foretold by Brahmaji to Narada. The demon Sankachura was killed by the Lord during his pastime at Horika in the month of Falgun, and the same ceremony is still observed in India by burning of the effigy of Sankachura one day prior to the Lord's pastime at Horika, generally known as Holi. Generally, the future appearance and the activities of the Lord or his incarnations are foretold in the scriptures, and thus the pseudo-incarnations are unable to cheat persons who are in knowledge of the events as they are described in the authoritative scriptures. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Shute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tirubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Right? Canto 2, chapter 7, verse 33, the translation goes, when the Lord was engaged in his pastime of the rasa dance in the forest of Vrindavana, enlivening the sexual desires of the wives of the inhabitants of Vrindavana by sweet and melodious songs, a demon of the name Sankachura, a rich follower of the treasure of heaven, Kuvera, kidnapped the damsels, and the Lord severed his head from the trunk. Hare Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada here is speaking about the scriptures and how the scriptures foretell what's to happen in the future, and how it also presents the various incarnations that are about to come. And in effect, basically that's educating us on not to get cheated on pseudo-incarnations. Obviously in Kali Yuga there's no shortage of pseudo-incarnations. If not every few years, actually now every few months, thanks to social media, we have a new incarnation that comes across and is there to cheat people, to make them believe that your path to enlightenment is actually quite easy and accessible, thanks to me. But Prabhupada is actually following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas, is presenting to us the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is again educating us and removing the darkness that's covering us. So actually in this chapter itself there are a couple of events. I mean, I don't want to take away from what's going to happen in the next few verses, but if you refer to verse number 12, there is a description of Matsya, and in that purport, that translation itself, if you read, it actually describes of a future foretelling. And that is, at the end of the millennium, there would be Vaivasvata Manu of the name Satyavrata would see the Lord in the fish incarnation of the shelter of all kinds of living entities. So it is speaking of something that's due to happen. It's worded in such a way, there would be Vaivasvata Manu. And again in the purport, Prabhupada speaks, this foretelling is by the past experience of Brahmaji. And similarly, if we go to the first canto, chapter 3, verse 24, which describes the appearance of Buddha, Lord Buddha. In that, Prabhupada again says, this Bhagavatam was written 5,000 years ago, but it speaks about something that's due to happen because Lord Buddha just appeared on this planet about 2,600 years ago. So it speaks about what's due to happen, and it gives specific details: who is his father, whose mother, where will he be born. And actually in that purport, Prabhupada writes that the reason why Srimad Bhagavatam can actually present to us these descriptions and it presents us to the absolute truth is because the Srimad Bhagavatam is without any trace of mistake, illusion, cheating, and imperfection. And it also says that these 4 defects are present in the conditioned soul, but Brahma, he speaks of Brahmaji. Brahmaji, being a liberated soul, can actually see through what's due to happen in the future. So that's what the Bhagavatam presents to us. Now, as quite often we are confronted with this decision, do we follow scripture or not? There are so many instances where even as practicing devotees, there are certain passages in the scriptures which tend to make us think. And actually I was listening to a class by Her Grace Urmila Mataji, and she was describing how we are always wanting to make the right decisions in life. We want to do the right thing because we want, in essence, we actually want a happy ending. We want all our decisions to have a successful outcome. But how do we make the successful decisions? And that is the question. And Prabhupada presents the answer as we follow Shastra, we follow scripture. And the analogy is given is of using a instruction manual. For example, if we get a gadget or if we get some device, quite often we follow the instruction manual to configure it or to for it to come to its to its fruition. It may very rarely has it been that we, without following the instruction manual, that we are successful. A few months ago, I was trying to install a little piece of furniture in a house, and always being a rebellious one, I just overlooked some of the instruction and I tried to do my own thing, and just knowing that by doing it, I can quickly undo. I can fix things that weren't to be fixed, and not knowing it took me another 2 hours to go back and undo all of it. And it was a realization in many ways, not only for furniture but for other things as well. But in general, the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and CC and various texts that are presented to us by His divine grace serve as the instruction manual. The instructions are given to us on how to engage with this world, and how to we engage with this world in such a way that we don't get affected by it. My Guru Maharaj always says, this body is a bad bargain, so just make the best use of a bad bargain. So this passage here speaks about the demons and the devotees. If you all remember, in the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, what is the distinction between demons and devotees? What do the demons do that devotees don't, or the other way around? Yeah, they follow Shastra. Well, the demons also follow the Shastra, but what is it that they miss? What is it that they miss in the Shastra? They also follow, Ravana was following Shastra. What do they miss? The essence of the Shastra is what they actually don't, And we'll discuss that later of a pastime in the Bhagavata. But coming back to this pastime, it is said that prior to this pastime happening, this pastime happened actually in one sense on Gaur Purnim. There's a beautiful Sanskrit word in the verse, Rashmi Gauriyam, white moonshine. That is actually just before Holi. Actually today, if we see the Holi that people play, is actually the colors are actually made up of chemicals. So it's actually very, it's not the right thing to do. But in Krishna's Ashtakalya Leela, Holi is generally, this pastime of Holi happens during midday. But in this specific instance, it actually happened at night, playing with colors. So it is said in this pastime, this pastime is described in more detail in the 10th canto, where Krishna and Balaram actually started playing all of the notes on the flute. And it's something very magical. How can you play all the notes on the flute? I mean, I don't play harmonium. Well, not yet, hoping by the mercy of the devotees. Someday. But they played, or Krishna plays all the notes on the flute. And that just stimulated the desires of the gopis. And actually it is said that in this word, in this translation again, this is a beautiful word called Uddipita. Or it comes from the Sanskrit word Uddipan. That which arouses the desires, or that which creates an impetus. So actually Prabhupada would say, or in Nectar Devotion, it is Rupa Goswami says that, in Prabhupada translates, actually everything in this world should serve as an Uddipan for us to remember Krishna, to serve Krishna. There's this pastime in the Chaitanya Charitamrita of Mukunda, who sees a peacock feather and all of a sudden he faints and it reminds him of Krishna. And so many such incidents are described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And even you would see quite often even the life of Prabhupada, wherever he would go, any particular flower he would see, or anything that he would, for example, can't remember this pastime in Mayapur, I'll think of it and I'll come back to it. But yes, everything serves an Uddipan. And I mean, for devotees who distribute books, few months later when they go past that street, oh yeah, I used to, I remember I met this wonderful devotee here, and I gave him a book, and that stimulates a desire to do more service or to distribute more books. And so, for each and one of us, there's a specific Uddipan. For example, some devotees who are interested in deity worship, when they come and take darshan, and there's a specific, whatever specific service they do, either decorating them by garlands or such, it reminds them, oh, this is the service, that I did last week, and now maybe I'll improve on the service as well. Actually, just tell a short story before I go further into this pastime. The story was told by His Grace Radhika Raman Prabhu, but then it was told to him by His Holiness Hanumat Prashaka Swami that there was this one devotee in the 70s who was, who was a Sankirtan leader, and he, basically was a very, very inspiring devotee, inspired a lot in his community. But then it just happened that something happened in his life, and at that time he just decided to move out of the temple. And he basically took on a different profession. He moved out far. He lived in the same city, but then he moved out to a different city altogether. And then he started his life in a different way, and then slowly and steadily he just quickly got away from everything that he was doing previously, as part of his sadhana. Many years later, he, at his workplace, there was a new employee who came about, and this colleague actually came up to him and said, actually, yesterday I received a book from a monk on the street, and it's from the Hare Krishna movement, and I read through this book last night, and I was very, very inspired by what I read. And I do know, based on something that I've heard about you, that you also had some relationship with this Hare Krishna movement. Could you please come along with me, because I don't want to go alone? And this devotee said, no, I can't. And then she begged, she said, please, and he said, I was, but this was about 25 years ago, and please, I'm just trying to be away from it, please. And she said, no, please, just one request, just come with me once, I don't want to go alone. And he said, fine, I'll be on one corner, and I won't interact with you there, I'll just be on one corner, you can do whatever you like, and then 20 minutes is all I have. Fair enough. So they go, and she goes into the temple room, and surprisingly, there were some devotees in the temple who knew him from the other city. So they see him there and they're like, oh, Prabhu, and he's like, oh, no, I'm not Prabhu. I'm whatever my name is. So he says, no, I'm not this, and they're like, no, this has to be that person. Anyway, they carry on with their services, and this lady is there, and she's really enjoying, having a good time. I think there was maybe noon arati happening at that time. So anyway, she was having a good time. And then all of a sudden, this devotee who was there, this person who I'm referring to, was quite controlled. He had it together. Something happened in the last 2 minutes, and he just lost it. Lost in the sense that he just couldn't control himself. He had tears coming out of his eyes. He just couldn't control himself. And guess what? He saw a devotee the pujari find the charmer. And that's the service he would do when he was actually in the temple. That's one service he did every day. The moment he saw that, he just couldn't control himself. So Krishna is like that. Krishna doesn't forget even the slightest thing you do for him. Yeah, we may have some challenges or some difficulties. We go away. Krishna will say, okay, you want to engage with Maya? Fair enough, go. But then Krishna looks at the slightest opportunity where he can get you back, and he gets you back. So that's one pastime that came to my mind as I just read this word this morning with Deepan. But over here we see, this again talks about the devotees and the demons. So while Krishna and the gopis were about to start this pastime of the rasa dance, it just happened to be that this demon named Sankachura comes on, comes on scene. And then what he does is with his big stick, he doesn't touch the gopis, but he just basically starts to lead them towards the north. And as it happens, the gopis just, start calling Krishna, please, protect us. And then Krishna sees it from a distance. And it's said that the moment Krishna sees, even though he's far away, it appears as though he's very close to Sankachura. And he starts chasing Sankachura. And he starts chasing Sankachura. Sankachura just, is frightened by the whole thing of Krishna chasing him. Finally, Krishna grabs hold of him and severs his head from the trunk. And then it said that Shankachura had a jewel which was shape of a conch shell. And actually that conch shell was actually giving him the strength or whatever he was doing. So Krishna then takes that jewel and gives it to Balaram. Now one may ask, why did he give it to Balaram and not the gopis? Anyone know? It's described in the 10th canto where it says that each of the gopis thought that, oh, I'm Krishna's favorite, so Krishna's going to give it to me. So just to keep peace on that side, he just gave it to Balaram. Balaram, you take it and just leave me alone. But actually the gopis felt indebted to Balaram because Balaram, while Krishna went away to deal with Sankachura, Balaram stayed back to protect the gopis. So they felt indebted to him. So they wanted that reciprocation, that, the token of gratitude to be presented to Balaram. But coming back to devotees versus demons, and here it is said that, again, as when devotees, when we see the sun, every morning when we see the sun, devotees are actually impelled, or they feel that mood of service where they want to serve the Lord. So, we wake up, chant, glorify the Lord, engage in, one of the 9 processes of bhakti. And similarly, when we see the moon, we think of this pastime. But on the other hand, the demons, basically, when they see the sun and the moon, they see the sun, they're just fueled by passion. We got to go and conquer this world. Comes from the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And the demons, when they see the moon, when they see moonshine, they basically are fueled by these desires to enjoy with their, partners, so on and so forth. So that's the difference between the devotees and the demons. But we got to understand that the devotees, or Krishna's love, or the love of the devotees, is actually voluntary. Whatever they do is out of love. Whereas the demons force that love. And because of that, Krishna's energy to them just seems, absent. For example, if I take a glass of water, or to the demons, basically Krishna's energy just seems dead because they want to apply force to it. So for example, if I take a glass here, the glass won't move on its own where it has to move. I have to take it and move it. So similarly, the demons, they want to force their love, or they want to force others to believe or to do as they like. Quite often I'm amused, but there's one statement of His Grace Bhurijan Prabhu that actually, even as devotees or practicing devotees, sometimes we identify ourselves as mini demons in one sense, where we want to control the situation. And Bhujan Prabhu says that quite often we go out, we walk around with this, tall statement that, excuse me, do you know who I am? I am the controller of this universe. Everyone and everything should actually surrender to me. Bhujan Prabhu said that the problem is that everyone on the street is actually thinking the same. So there is, there's so much of competition that how will you actually succeed? Because it's not only you, it's others too who actually go about with this notion. So, there's this pastime in the Bhagavatam where supposedly a demon, where roles are reversed. Do you know which pastime I'm referring to? Vritasura, yeah. And one other one which has happened last week. We celebrated his appearance last week. Bali Maharaj. So, Bali Maharaj appears in the family of demons. He's the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj, the son of Virochana. And actually, if you read the 8th canto, it describes how he had actually conquered, all those planets, and he had kicked out Indra from his kingdom. And I won't get into the detail, but then Mother Aditi prayed for a son who actually appears as Vamanadev. And Vamanadev then goes to Bali Maharaj. And as he goes to Bali Maharaj is attracted by this little effulgent, radiant Brahmana. And he goes to Bali Maharaj, and Bali Maharaj is then just fueled by this desire to serve him. And he asks him that, what is it, you're a Brahmana, and it's my duty to actually serve you. So what can I do for you? What can I give you in charity? And there is Sukracharya, who is actually standing right next to Bali Maharaj, and he tells him, don't give him anything, he's Vishnu. You will lose everything. And then Bali Maharaj is basically then caught in a dilemma. He's like, as a spiritual master, you've taught me to surrender everything to Vishnu, and now you're taking back. And then Sukracharya says that, Bali Maharaj then says, I've made a promise to Vamanadev. And actually it is said, as we discussed earlier, the demons also know the Shastra, but they don't know the essence of the Shastra. So Sukracharya says, yes, I know you've made a promise, but there are actually instances in the Shastra which actually permit you to break your promise. In times of emergency, and there are 2 other instances where he says you can actually break, and he's quoting Shastra. But he doesn't realize that Vishnu is right there, and one should surrender everything to Vishnu. So Bali Maharaj then basically says, I've made a promise, and I'm not going to move away from it. So at that very moment, Vamanadev asks, okay, just give me 3 steps of land. And Bali Maharaj says, I can give you much more. Why don't you ask me for much more? This is nothing. And Vamanadev makes a very interesting statement there that if you're not satisfied in your mind, you can have the whole, the entire universe, and you won't be satisfied. But if you're satisfied in your mind and your heart, then 3 steps of land, as long as you're satisfied within, externally, externals wouldn't matter to you. I'm paraphrasing it. So Bali Maharaj then Sukracharya gets so upset with Bali Maharaj that he just disowns his Bali Maharaj. He says, I curse you that you will lose everything. And just imagine Bali Maharaj's predicament at that moment. At one end, he's going to lose everything by Vamanadev. And now he's cursed by his spiritual master to lose everything. And I was reading a transcript of a lecture by Thoni Radha Swami, and he described it so dramatically that at that very moment, Bali Maharaj just thought, he could have rather committed suicide. But he had only 2 alternatives. Either surrender, either offend Vishnu or offend his spiritual master. And he went with the latter, where he, in one sense, it seemed like he offended his spiritual master. So he then basically tells Vamanadev, please take your 3 steps. And as the story goes, with his 1 step, he conquered the middle and the lower planets. The 2nd step, he basically conquered the upper planets, and he pierced through the covering of the universe, and then the Ganges comes through. And Garuda sees this, and he says, Bali Maharaj, you're a liar. With 2 steps, he's conquered everything. What are you going to do with the 3rd step? And Maharaj then describes, just imagine, Bali Maharaj has surrendered everything, And the reason why he surrendered everything, because he didn't want to lose his dignity, which was his. Because Bali Maharaj says that what's the use? Because everything would be taken away from me. Vishnu is going to take everything from me anyway. Why don't I just give everything to him voluntarily? But here Bali Maharaj is being accused of a liar. So he's given everything to Krishna, or to Vamanadev, and he's being accused as a liar. And not only that, he's tied. He's been tied with ropes by Garuda and the other associates. And right next to him is his wife, Vidyavali. And Maharaj describes that which man would want to be humiliated in front of his wife? And Maharaj describes that's if Krishna wants to humble you, nothing can stop it. And Bali Maharaj is standing there. He's lost his kingdom. He's lost his wealth. What may seem externally, he's lost his dignity. But there he is. He's ecstatic. He's super ecstatic. And he tells Vamanadev that actually I've given you everything, but now I surrender my very life to you. And at that very moment, and he says that please put your third step on my head. And as that happens, Vamanadev just puts his head and then just pushes him down to Sutala, where Vamanadev agrees to be his doorkeeper. So the moral of the story is that by giving to Krishna, one doesn't lose anything, one gains. And that's Maharaj says in that pastime that the difference between devotees and demons is that when demons follow Shastra and when there's even a slight agitation, a slight upheaval in following the instruction of Shastra, they just get disturbed and then they just, do things that are just push them further down. But on the other hand, devotees, even there's a slight disturbance, or even the greatest calamities a devotee faces, it makes him more grateful to Krishna. And actually in that pastime itself, Bali Maharaj in his later prayers says that actually we as demons are more fortunate, because for demigods, the Lord gives and gives. He increases their prestige. But somehow or the other, they don't realize their good fortune of, they never get this feeling of being, of getting Krishna's mercy. For example, the verse in the 10th canto, Tatenu Kampam Samikshamana. So, on the other hand, the demons, everything gets taken away by Krishna, but what we get is actually Krishna. Obviously, he's referring to that pastime of his, where he got Krishna as his, or Vishnu as his doorkeeper. So, I would like to conclude with saying that basically the difference between devotees and demons is demons, or as devotees, we follow Shastra, and a lot of time when we follow Shastra, there are quite a few things that we can't really comprehend. And how do we make sense of it, or how do we understand, how do we pray for that realization is we see the lives of great personalities. Mahajano, how does it verse finish? Mahajano yena gata sapanta. So today is actually a very important day. Does anyone know what's today? 9th of September? Srila Prabhupada's arrival in the US. Today is the day he actually arrived in the US. And we see from his life itself how his life was such a glorious life of surrender, unshaking determination amidst all challenges. Actually, just this past weekend with my Guru Maharaj's Vyas Puja, and in that a lot of devotees were speaking about the Juhu project. And it is said that how all of the major personalities in Bombay, personalities meaning, the life members of the Juhu project, and major, so basically, Prabhupada had opposition from the government, from the government officials, and from mafia, and from so many others who didn't want this temple to be built. Not only that, many life members felt that this is not the right place for Prabhupada to build the temple. Furthermore, Prabhupada's leading disciples felt that this is this is just, I wouldn't say they use the word over endeavor, but they felt that this is not going to plan. Prabhupada himself was the only person who stood his ground. And later on, after the temple was built, there's a pastime of Prabhupada on the rooftop right next to the Juhu temple when the temple was being built, when they gotten all the permission and then they went through all these phantasmagoria. Basically, there's a servant of Prabhupada who's fanning Prabhupada. It's 7 o'clock. And Prabhupada says, I think Nanda Kumar, do you hear the Arati bell ringing? And Nanda Kumar Prabhu says, no, Prabhupada. Do you hear the devotees singing? He says, no, Prabhupada, I don't hear. And Prabhupada then just loses cool. That is what I'm asking. I don't hear anything. Where are the devotees? And he said, oh, Prabhupada, they've gone to the city to collect funds and do that. And Prabhupada said, that's not what I said. Yes, you go and basically engage in Sankirtan, but then you come and look after the Lord. Basically, you attend these programs. And he said, he was describing Mr. Nair. Mr. Nair and all the other people, they had all of the money, they had all of the resources, they had everything practically for them to make them victorious. We on the other hand, had no money, no contacts, no resources, but we only had Radha Rasbihari on our side. And because I had made this vow to Radha Rasbihari that you stay here on this land, I'll build you a temple. That's where Radha Rasbihari protected us. So we see that in lives of many devotees, whatever obstacle or challenges that they come across, they never lose sight of the goal, which is to always remember Krishna and never forget him. So that serves a lesson for all of us. And today again, on this most very auspicious day where Prabhupada arrived in the US, we can meditate on that, or we can actually read and meditate on his poem that he wrote, Markina Bhagavad Dharma, which would give us the inspiration to even, it serves as the uddipan for us to serve Shri Radha Gopinath, Srila Prabhupada, and the movement or the mission here in Sydney and in Greater New South Wales. So I think I've just touched 8:45. So unless someone has one question or comment, yes, Mandraguru Prabhu. Okay, go ahead. So like I said, demons follow the instruction of the Shastra, but they don't get the essence. They don't realize the essence of the Shastra. In Ravana's instance, he followed everything meticulously. Actually, I didn't know of this pastime, but maybe some of you all may know. I don't know where this is taken from, but anyway, this is what I'd heard, that Ravana was a Brahmin. And actually he had done what you can say is the house welcoming or the house warming ceremony of Lord Shiva. So he's someone who knows the Shastra. He knows exactly what it is. But he doesn't realize the essence of the Shastra, which is surrender to Vishnu. Just fast forward that to the pastime of Hiranyakashipu. Now if you see Hiranyakashipu right after the death of Hiranyaksha, when he's going to console the wives of Hiranyaksha, he's actually speaking philosophy. He's saying, what's the use of lamenting for this body, which is actually, we're beyond this body, we're actually the soul, and that can never be destroyed. So he's speaking, you can say Shastra, but like I said, difference between devotees and demons is that even at the slightest agitation, now even for us, we may be practicing, and we are at the stage of we are practicing devotees, but we should check ourselves to see, even if there's a slight agitation, even if there's a slight disturbance in us practicing bhakti, how do we react to it? Are we reacting to it in a favorable way or an unfavorable way? Because that's what basically discriminates between a devotee and a demon. We all have the little demon within us, and at times that's awakened. So, in a nutshell, basically, demons don't follow the essence of the Shastra. And that's what we see. In Bhagavatam too, you'll see in so many different places. They know the Shastra, they know of it, but then they don't get the essence of it. Okay. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki,